the truth they tried to hide. Malcolm X wasn't just a leader. He was a revolution in flesh and blood. An unstoppable force that challenged the system, exposed the hypocrisy of the powerful, and illuminated the darkness of a nation that refused to see its own decay. But even so, his story was almost erased. His message was distorted and his voice was silenced, or at least they tried. But who is Malcolm X? The man who transformed from an ordinary criminal into a legend, who used his pain, his anger, and his truth to do the impossible, put the entire structure of a nation at risk. He wasn't just an icon, he was a direct threat to the system. And with every step, every word, he left traces of a story that society has been trying to hide at all costs. He didn't die, he made himself immortal. You are about to discover what many have tried to hide. This is not just another biography of Malcolm X. Here we will reveal the deepest secrets, the betrayals, the challenges, and the moments that irrevocably changed the course of history. This is a dive into the past, but with an appeal for the present. Because what he started, we continue. Now, I ask you to do something simple but crucial for this moment. Subscribe to the channel. The story of Malcolm X needs to be told, and you are a part of it. The rise of a living threat, the beginning of it all. Malcolm X was not an ordinary figure. He was an unstoppable force, a storm slowly forming, and with each step, he became more dangerous to those who feared the truth. His early life, marked by loss, pain, and marginalization, prepared him to be exactly what he became, a living threat. Malcolm wasn't born knowing his destiny. As a child, he was merely a reflection of the injustices that surrounded him. The death of his father, a black activist who was murdered by white supremacists, marked his life forever. How could he understand at the time that his future would be shaped by these tragedies? But the scars of his youth became his strength. From a life of poverty and exclusion, he emerged as a man able to see the truth where others saw only lies. In prison, where he was sent for minor crimes, Malcolm discovered a new path. It was there that he found the Nation of Islam, an organization that would shape his life and worldview. He came to understand that racism was not an isolated problem, but a systematic structure that oppressed not only black people, but the poor and marginalized everywhere. His spiritual transformation was the key to his rise, and when he left prison he was no longer the man who entered. He was now a direct threat to the oppressive system, a man willing to go to any lengths to break the chains of mental slavery. But the most impressive thing was how he used his pain to transform reality. With every step he took, the system's reaction grew stronger. He became a symbol, a man whose voice could no longer be ignored. What started as a fringe discourse from a radical man quickly transformed into an undeniable truth for millions. From the ghetto to the UN, the plan the government didn't want you to know. Malcolm X wasn't just a leader of a black nation. He didn't accept the limits society tried to impose on him. His vision quickly expanded from a local leader to an international figure. When he broke with the Nation of Islam, the US government knew that this could be fatal. Not only for him but for the very established order. Rather than accepting a limited role, Malcolm decided to fight for the freedom not just of black Americans, but of all colonized and oppressed people around the world. He saw the racial struggle in the United States as part of a global movement, where the oppression of one race was, in fact, an oppression that permeated every continent. With this mindset, he traveled around the world, bringing his message of justice, freedom, and equality. Africa, Europe, and even the UN became the stages on which he shone. The US government tried to silence him, but he didn't just speak to black people. He spoke to the oppressed of the entire world. Malcolm X didn't see his discourse as something regional. He didn't want to be a leader just of America. He wanted to be the leader of a revolution that challenged racism and exploitation everywhere. And by taking his fight to the UN, he did something no one else had the courage to do. He exposed the reality of black genocide to a global audience, opening the world's eyes to the hypocrisy of the United States. The Black Messiah the FBI feared would arise. Malcolm X wasn't just a political figure. He represented an existential threat to the status quo, a danger to the established order, which feared that he would become the leader of a movement that united all the oppressed peoples of the world. He wasn't just an orator, he was a symbol of global resistance. The threat he posed was so great that the FBI placed him on their blacklist, aiming to neutralize him at any cost. The COINTELPRO program, designed to discredit leaders like Malcolm, was in action. Every word, every move Malcolm made was monitored and distorted. But still he did not back down. For the FBI, what made Malcolm X such a great threat wasn't just what he said, but what he was about to achieve. He was uniting not just black Americans but oppressed people all over the world. He was creating an international network of resistance, and that was unacceptable to those who benefited from oppression. Malcolm X knew this. He knew he was being watched, but he didn't back down. He pressed on, with the courage of someone who understood that his sacrifice would be necessary for the liberation of all. The last week of life, silence before the storm. What happened in the last week of Malcolm X's life was the culmination of a lifetime of struggle. But it wasn't just the moment of his death that was significant, it was what he was doing with the last days of his life. Malcolm knew his mission was not complete, but he didn't know how much time he had left to finish what he started. He had the sense that the system had already passed its sentence on him, but he didn't stop working. Malcolm was preparing for an international tribunal that would accuse the United States of genocide against the black people. He was about to reveal uncomfortable truths, but death came before he could complete this stage of his revolution. The death they tried to erase, and the voice that reborn. Malcolm X was not just murdered, he was silenced. But what his killers did not know was that his death would be only the beginning of a new era. The truth he spoke, the seeds he planted, continue to grow to this day. He may have been physically killed, but his voice resonated in every corner of the world, each time someone stood up against oppression. The government tried to erase him, but it failed. His message, his struggle, continued to inspire millions around the world. Malcolm X's death was not the end of his fight, but the beginning of an immortal movement. The spiritual transformation, from hatred to love, the turn that challenged all limits. If there's one thing Malcolm X's story teaches us, it's that a human being is capable of reinventing himself, transforming in ways that seem impossible. The most significant change in Malcolm's life wasn't his rise as a leader, nor even how he challenged the system. The true transformation of Malcolm X happened on a deeper level. It was his spiritual conversion, a radical turn that challenged everything he thought, and yet made him a much stronger and wiser man. When he entered prison, he was a man full of hatred, resentment, and anger against the system that had oppressed him. He saw the world through the lens of a revolution, a constant fight against everything that had brought him down. However, upon finding the Nation of Islam and beginning his spiritual journey, he embarked on a transformation few could imagine. He began to understand that hatred, although a powerful force, was also destructive, both for those who fueled it and for those who received it. It was through his faith and spiritual lessons that he began to question his own beliefs. The man who once spoke of vengeance and retribution now found himself challenged to look beyond the limitations of ego, to transcend anger, and to find a new way of seeing the world. His faith became a turning point not only for him but also for those who listened to him. He was ready to accept that sometimes true power doesn't come from external struggle, but from internal control. It was during a pilgrimage to Mecca that Malcolm's transformation reached its peak. He witnessed a brotherhood among people of different ethnicities, colors, and backgrounds, something that defied everything he had believed before. At a crucial moment in his journey, Malcolm X had a profound insight. The true fight wasn't just against the oppressive system, but against the very prejudices he often carried with him. He realized that true freedom would only be possible when he began to free himself from the shackles of anger, hatred, and resentment. Back in the United States, he didn't just continue his fight for civil rights, but now with a more peaceful, centered, and loving approach. He began advocating the idea that to achieve true freedom, it was also necessary to liberate the mind, the soul, and the heart, just as one fought for physical freedom. What Malcolm X was trying to say with this was that the true revolution begins within each individual, and only then can the chains of oppression be broken in a true and lasting way. Malcolm X's spiritual turn was one of the most powerful in modern history, because, contrary to what many imagined, he didn't become weaker or more passive. On the contrary, he became more powerful, wiser, and unbeatable. The system couldn't neutralize him, because what he now represented was much greater than any institution or structure that could exist. The immortal legacy. Malcolm X and the collective awakening of a people. You can kill a man. You can try to erase his name from history, hide his words, even destroy his image. But you can never kill an idea. And the ideas that Malcolm X planted did not die on February 21, 1965. They were reborn, grew, and flourished in ways he could never have imagined. Because Malcolm X's legacy is not just a fight for social justice. He is the awakening of collective consciousness. He is the deep cry that comes from the soul, saying it is time for all people, not just black people but humanity as a whole, to wake up to the truth that has been hidden for centuries. He was a flame that illuminated the darkest corners of ignorance, racism, oppression, but also of faith, unity, and freedom. Malcolm X knew what many still didn't. He knew that the power of the oppressor didn't lie just in their weapons, their control systems, or their laws. Their power was in the silence of ignorance, in the conformity of passive acceptance, in the illusion that the status quo was natural and immutable. He knew that, to change the world, it was necessary to awaken the masses to what was happening before their eyes, but that many refused to see. Malcolm X's speech wasn't just a response to injustices, it was a wake-up call to the whole world, a call to all those who still feel powerless against the system. He said, "The only fight that matters is the fight for consciousness. Because when the people become conscious, they no longer bow. When the people become conscious, they demand their right to truth, freedom, and dignity." And here lies the true power of Malcolm X. He wasn't a man who fought only for a cause. He was the messenger of a revolution that transcends time and space. What he started in his life, what he sowed in every word, every speech, every battle, is an immortal force that cannot be silenced. Today, more than ever, Malcolm X is present. And he is more alive than ever in the streets, in the struggles, in the minds of those who refuse to accept a world where oppression still reigns. He is present in the gaze of every young person who, upon encountering his story, feels the flame of revolution ignite within themselves. He is present in the fight for equality, in the resistance against injustice, and in the cry for freedom that echoes across every corner of the planet. Malcolm X knew his life was at risk, but he was willing to die for something far greater than his own existence. He was willing to die to ensure that the spirit of freedom would never be extinguished, because he knew that the true revolution starts within each of us. He knew that, by awakening the consciousness of a people, he was unleashing something much bigger than a simple social movement. He was sowing a mental and spiritual revolution that would span generations. Malcolm X's vision of the future, the dream did not die with him. Malcolm X was not just a critic of the present, he was a visionary of the future. Even surrounded by threats, betrayals, and the constant weight of persecution, his mind was focused on what could still be built. In his most recent speeches, there was a different tone, almost prophetic. He didn't speak only of the pain of black people in America, but of the global awakening of the oppressed. He dreamed of an international alliance of marginalized peoples, united not just by skin color, but by the shared pain of injustice and the hope of liberation. Malcolm believed the future belonged to those who dared to imagine a new world, a world where the artificial lines of racial division would be replaced by the spiritual unity of humanity. He knew that such a vision would not be easily accepted by those in power, and perhaps that is why he was silenced so swiftly. But still he planted the dream. In every word, he sowed the possibility of a more just, more conscious, more free tomorrow. And it is in that dream that we find ourselves now. It did not die with Malcolm X. It lives on in every mind that refuses to accept the lies of the system. It beats in the heart of every person who believes that love can overcome hate, that truth can break through silence, that consciousness is stronger than any chain. The future Malcolm envisioned still lies ahead of us. It is up to us to bring it to life. And here, at the heart of his message, you stand before a turning point. The revolution is no longer a distant idea, a battle from the past. It is yours, it is now. When you watch this video, when you reflect on the story of Malcolm X, you are called to join this force. You are called to take on the role of awakening, of acting, of never again bowing to fear, ignorance, or oppression. But the struggle doesn't end here. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Comment below what Malcolm X meant to you. Because by doing so, you are also feeding the flame of revolution. You are ensuring that Malcolm's voice continues to resonate, stronger, more potent, more present than ever. And you are telling the world, the fight for truth, justice, and freedom will never be silenced.